welcome to the board meeting. Let's start off with Pledge of Allegiance, please. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before we jump in, I would like to recognize Ani Rose, who has joined us tonight. And you're here for the rest of the time, right?
Yes.
Okay.
I promise.
Welcome.
All right, so we have under communications, there are two pieces. One was included in the board packet. We have one letter of resignation from Laura Gerber, who is school counselor, one of two school counselors at Lyman Memorial High School. She writes it was with great reluctance that she writes a letter to give her notice of resignation from her position as school counselor. Her last date of employment will be January 16, 2020. She has received an offer to work as a school counselor for the state of Connecticut in their technical high school system, and feels that that is an opportunity that fits in with her needs professionally and personally. She also wanted us to know when she wrote the letter to Mr. Apicelli, Ms. McCarthy, myself, and to the board, that she worked with the State of Connecticut Human Resources Department to be able to stay basically through the end of the first semester with our students here. And she appreciates the time that she spent here at Lyman Memorial High School with the opportunities that she's had to work with our staff and students. The second piece of correspondence is one that I received yesterday from Rachel Archer of the LES PTA. The PTA has been very supportive of the elementary school. And a few years ago, they purchased a system that included an iPad, which is no longer functioning. So they would like to replace that iPad with a new one. So a 12.9-inch iPad Pro in space gray for $9. They would also provide a 3-year Apple Care service program at an additional $129. So they'll be making a donation of the iPad Pro along with the service plan for a total of $1,078 to the elementary school. So I've gone ahead and accepted the donation, and I'm providing that information for you tonight.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Introductions.
Okay. So next up is the introductions. We have a new school resource officer that started with the district on December 2nd, Officer Slonsky. And Trooper Kono, our resident trooper, is here, as well as our new first selectman, Mr. Zwickler. I don't know if you're here in support of that program. No? Well, I'm sure you do support the program, but if you're not here specifically for that.
Want to say seat or?
Yeah, that would be great. So in your packets, you have the letter that I sent out to parents and guardians and had previously shared with the board, dated November 8th, that gave some of Kevin's background and qualifications for the position. His 30 years experience with the Connecticut State Police, previous experience as an English teacher at St. Thomas More, as well as spending time with what was then the DEEP, just the DEP, which is now currently the DEEP with the state of Connecticut, as a Forest Ranger, am I getting that right, Kevin?
Correct.
Right, Forest Ranger. So it comes with a diverse background, which also includes teaching experience. And so we have Officer Slonsky and Resident Trooper Kono with us tonight if you have questions or for them, or if you have any other introductory statements you'd like to make.
I'm not good at introducing other people, so I'll let Kevin introduce himself.
I am Kevin, obviously. Probably said it all. I retired day after Thanksgiving, the 30th was my last day on the books, and there I was one day here. Some of the process of shifting gears, meeting a lot of people. It's been great so far. I feel very welcome. I'd like to thank everybody for welcoming me. I see some familiar faces behind me there, yourself. Now things are going great. I'm looking forward to it. Got my toes in the water right now, so it's going to take me a little bit to figure everything out. But I'm working my way through the process. Seems like a great bunch of kids and great faculty, so I'm excited about it.
Well, welcome. Congratulations.
Thank you.
I know you weren't able to make it Friday night to a subcommittee meeting we have on safety and security, but it was noted during the meeting that there's just a great climate that started this year with the constables and Trooper Kono, and just it's wonderful when it clicks, and we're glad we're in the groove right now. So thanks for all your effort on that.
We decided to put not a perfect scenario with having the town officers fill in, but I think it worked out well. That way, at least the kids see somebody, and then it was a much smoother transition once we got Kevin on full time and permanently. So appreciate you guys, everybody's patience with that, because unfortunately the hiring process for a police officer can be quite lengthy, and it went actually pretty smoothly with Kevin, but it's time consuming. So thanks for your patience.
Yeah, thanks for the work.
Thank you.
Next.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes. Okay, so next up on the agenda is a recognition. We have a twofold recognition this evening. We're going to recognize some students who recently received the CAP Superintendent Award at a banquet held with area superintendents at Ram High School. And then the second part will be some recognition of staff members who have received Paraprofessional of the Year and Teachers of the Year. So I'm going to get up and go over there so I could be closer with the students. So first I'm going to start with the middle school students. Unfortunately, they could not be here this evening. One has an athletic event and the other one unfortunately went home ill. It's funny, we were talking, we are well into cold and flu season. But my 8th grade award recipients, Madeline Archer is our female 8th grade recipient. Madeline is an excellent student who demonstrates academic excellence in every class. She's a leader among her peers as she strives to set a good example and be a positive role model. She is very active in school sports as well as leagues outside of school. She has been a member of the student council, chorus, soccer team, a volleyball team, and track team. Madeline is always willing to help out in the classroom, is a leader to other students, and very conscientious with her work, and always is demonstrating Panther pride. She has devoted a great deal of time helping the Lyman Memorial Athletics Booster Club and participates in Earth Day cleanups annually. Madeline has earned other awards and recognitions along the way, including the Richard Thank you. Wayaz Award, LMS Principals Award, and the Billy Valvo Award. Right? And these write-ups were included in a pamphlet that was shared with all the parents and administrators who attended the banquet. Also in 8th grade, Benjamin D'Alicio. Ben is a very active student who does very well academically and devotes a great deal of time in extracurricular activities. Ben is an avid soccer player who plays on school teams as well as indoor league teams. Ben has held the role of captain and enjoys helping younger players hone their skills. Ben has earned awards and recognition that include LMS Top Cat, Student Athlete Award, Presidential Excellence, and Academics Award. Ben is involved in many activities outside of school, which include being a camp counselor, working on his family farm, and helping out the elderly in the community. So those are our two Lebanon Middle School CAP Superintendent Award recipients. They received a certificate at the banquet, and we have a little extra gift that we'll get to both the middle school recipients at school. I do have my high school award recipients with us today. So I will, and Christina, why don't you come on up? I'm going to start with 12th grader, Christina Klauser, and I'm never sure if I'm pronouncing that.
It's Klauser, yeah.
Klauser, very good. Right, I have to get that right because Christina is future president of the United States. And while we were at the banquet, she was perusing the book, picking out her future cabinet members, because it was a high-powered group of students. So Christine Klauser is an outstanding all-around student at Lyman Memorial High School. Christina is a strong, positive role model at the school and in the community. Christina has maintained a rigorous course work during her time at Lyman and has been recognized by her teachers with yearly awards at their awards banquet. Her scholarship, character, and leadership at Lyman has led her to the induction in the National Honor Society, where she is president, and in the French Honor Society, where she is the elected diplomat. Christina is in the editor-in-chief of our school newspaper and is a member of the French Club and the Model UN. Christina has earned varsity letters in 3 sports, swimming, indoor track, and tennis. Christina has also been heavily involved in the 4-H activities. She started in 4-H as a team leader working with children and was promoted to supervising activities shortly thereafter. She has worked as a teen ambassador, participating in community service and outreach projects, as well as planning events and improvements to the overall program. She has been a part of the National 4-H Congress in Atlanta, Georgia, where students focused on developing leadership skills, promoting citizenship and global awareness and inclusion. Christina was also selected to attend the National 4-H trip to Washington, D.C., where the students participated in activities related to civic education and the United States government. So you can see why Christina was selected for this award. And as I said, Christina received her certificate at the awards banquet, but there is a little something else to recognize your accomplishments. And last, we have Jacob Michelle. Jacob, come on up. Jacob was not able to make it to the banquet because Jacob was the lead in our fall productions at the high school, and that was the final dress rehearsal before opening night, and you know you can't miss that, right? So Jacob Michelle is one of our top all-around students at Lyman Memorial High School, excelling not only in academics, but in but in a variety of extracurricular pursuits as well. Jacob has challenged himself with rigorous courses every year, including numerous advanced placement courses. He has been recognized for his outstanding achievements through the induction in the National Honor Society and the French Honor Society. He has been in leadership positions within his class as class president and in student council as their current president. He has attended the Hugh O'Brien Youth Leadership Conference as well as Boys State, and has been awarded the E. Fenn Norse Award for displaying citizenship and spirit within the Lyman community. Jacob has been captain of the tennis team for the past 2 years, earning earning.
Did I mess up all conference?
There you go. Earning all conference force performances. Thank you. Jacob's extracurricular interests also include Model UN, where he has been named Best Delegate for the World Affairs Council of Connecticut Model UN. Jacob is a gifted actor and has performed in Lyman productions of Grease, Macbeth, Les Mis, and in a student-created play, Brian's Mirror. So that was the latest production this fall. He has also performed with Looking in the Theater, which is a group of high school students who portray real-life scenarios involving students. They address topics like racism, drug and alcohol abuse, and suicide, and then interact with the audience following the performance. So, Jacob and Michelle, congratulations. And so that is our 4 recipients for the CAP Superintendent's Award. I think Sam's going to take care of the teachers, and Cheryl will be taking care of our IA.
So, unfortunately, none of the teachers could be here due to illness and family commitments. So, I'm just going to go through the write-ups that I have for them. So, first is at the elementary level, Erin Schumann. So she's been part of the Lebanon School District since December of 2005. She mostly teaches at the elementary level, but did do 6 years at the middle school level. In addition to her daily teaching, she was a team leader for related arts. She's participated in PBIS events, leads plays and concerts in 3rd and 4th grade, and she assists 4th graders with band lessons and full school band performances in middle school, and her husband is also in education. He is a music teacher in Colchester. So, musical. Next is Keo Narita, who is at the high school. He's been in Lebanon for 17 years. He currently teaches science and VHS at Lyman. So we always describe him as someone who has more than 24 hours in his day because he just keeps going. In addition to teaching, he reviews a lot of data for us, and he's the co-department head of the science department. He helped to design and implement the master schedule at the high school this year. And if that's not enough, this summer he came in and worked with me, which I'm sure was thrilling, on designing new data forms for assessment data to help improve our students' performance on our assessment. So he spent some time doing that with me and restructuring PLCs. Next is John Klauslowski. He is actually at the middle school, and in addition to being the middle school's teacher, he was the district teacher of the year. So he basically, the process is you go before a committee, you interview, and then you're selected out of the 3. So he was selected to be the district teacher of the year, and he spoke at our convocation earlier this year. He has been teaching in Lebanon for 22 years. He has taught social studies, and for the past several years has taught LMS computer classes. In addition to teaching, he's the website coordinator for the district and is also the test administrator at the middle school. Aside from being a big history buff, it was pointed out to me that he's a huge Red Sox fan, so I decided to include that in there. So that's our 3 teachers of the year this past year.
Hello, everyone. Andy, you want to come up next to me now? Come on. Okay. So it's my pleasure to be here this evening recognizing our paraeducator of the year, Ann Angelastro. Typically, I would have reached out to Ann to ask her, what kind of caveats would you like me to include while I recognize you in front of the board. But when our committee selected Ann back in June, she sent me the most heartfelt thank you note about being selected as Paraeducator of the Year. So I'm just going to use some of her words that she sent to me in June. So Ann's career began at Lyman 15 years ago when she thought she wanted to transition to teaching after working in the field of marketing for 30 years. Ann's attraction back to education came after missing the learning and sharing of experiences that she felt while working on both her bachelor's and her master's degree at NYU. She shared with me that after the first few weeks of working at Lyman, as a paraeducator, she knew that it was the perfect fit for her. And here's some of the things that she said about it. Being a para is challenging. Yes, it is. Every student is different and responds to instruction and guidance in their own way. There are students who are indifferent towards learning and students who struggle with simple tasks. Sometimes it takes a few minutes to connect, but more often it takes days or weeks. There are certainly tough days, but those are the days that provide new experiences that help us to be able to assist another student on another day. In the end, there's nothing more rewarding. I can truly say that being a paraprofessional at Lyman is my most favorite job of all times. So it's my honor to recognize Anne here tonight. She's truly amazing, and our Paraeducator of the Year award is hinged to Ann Murphy Paraeducator of the Year award, which was initiated in Sandy Hook, because Ann Murphy was the paraeducator that lost her life in Sandy Hook. So whoever we educate, we move on to, whoever we choose, we move on to the state too. So yeah.
And Cheryl, one of the
also followed
points
up
that
and went to a conference this year that included paraeducators of the year. So she's very well rounded and certainly an asset here.
We're going to take a short recess to shake hands, say hi, and eat a little bit. Help yourself. Okay, we'll call the meeting back to order. Next thing on the agenda is public participation. Our policy and bylaws allow for a 2-minute presentation by anyone from the town. Would anyone like to make a comment to the Board of Education?
Rob Laskazewski, 124 Tobacco Street. I'd like to address the board. I'd like to preface it thinking about the 5th grade class here at the middle school. The 5th grade class does a one wish essay every December where they write a heartfelt wish for their family, something they're passionate about. So I wanted to give my one wish for December, and that's, I've been through 14 years of the budget process, and I find it incredible, and I wish there was a way for the Board of Education to work with the Board of Finance to convey that some years we need more money than what they seem to dictate. When we try to form budgets at, let's say, the 2 or 3% earmark that often gets put out, however it gets put out, and we're starting from a point that's already above that percentage, then it's always starting with what are we going to cut, not what are we going to do what's best for kids, because we're already at a negative to start with. So while the superintendent is charged with this, and he's going to do it because that's his charge, and he'll do it with our assistance, I just want to make it clear the consequences that happen after year of cutting budgets in a small school system. I've been here since 2006. Since 2006, the middle school has cut its assistant principal. It has cut 2 teachers from a gifted and talented multi-age program that was phenomenal. Program's gone. It has cut an additional 5th grade teacher along with the multi-age program that was 5 and 6. It has cut a 6th grade teacher. It has cut a reading interventionist. I used to have 2. Or the middle school used to have 2. We have 1 now. The middle school used to have full-time band. It does not anymore. The middle school used to offer French, Spanish, starting at 6th grade, and had 2 full-time world language teachers. We now have 1. The middle school used to offer health, something the students really need. The students no longer have a health teacher. The middle school and the other 2 schools used to have a building substitute that made running our PPTs and different things every day very easy by having a full-time substitute. The buildings used to have full-time secretaries. Now we're down to half secretaries in the front. The middle school used to have lunch monitors, which helped immensely during lunchtime. And last but not least, the Board of Ed used to fund field trips so that all students could attend field trips, not just those that can afford them. So my point is just that I truly wish the Board of Finance understood that while we are fiscally responsible, we also need to offer the right things to the parents and students of Lebanon. Two of mine that went through this system, and I pray to God mine that's a freshman gets to take all the courses that I hope are still going to be available in the next 3 years. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, seeing none, we'll move along. Consent agenda. We have 3 items on there. Does anyone see the need to approve any of those items? Could I have a motion on the consent agenda, please?
I make a motion, we accept the consent agenda as listed.
We motion and seconded. Any discussion? I see no discussion. All those in favor of the consent agenda, raise your hand. That's unanimous. Consent agenda is approved. Moving on to reports of committees. Again, I'd like to hear from all the committees, even if you have no report because you did not meet. Maybe you can just tell us what you have coming down the line, and if you need anything from the governance committee or the superintendent for what you have coming in the future. I'd like to start out with the governance subcommittee. A couple things to report to you. Take one of these, please, and pass it to your desk mate. The first thing I'm giving you is a handout is basically our standing agenda at the governance subcommittee. We did meet this month. It was myself and Sarah. Maureen was out of state on travel, so she couldn't make it. And basically the main board agenda is a product of our meeting. A couple of notes on that. As I said in the email, Bob will put out a call for agenda items and or subcommittee meetings the last couple days of the previous month, which will allow the governance committee to meet about a week before the scheduled board meeting, so we can take that input from the board members and come up with an agenda. So that's basically the rough out there. So you should see both things, a request for board agenda items and a request for subcommittee meetings. We had a couple of subcommittee meetings this month that we were able to get those put out and scheduled like a week ahead of time roughly, and I think it worked out for Bob pretty well. He had time to get the information together to make a better subcommittee meeting. So keep that in mind, especially if your agenda is come later and later in the time period, you might not be able to get the material together for you. We did talk about training for the board at our governance subcommittee meeting. We're looking at having a first board of education training session. It'll probably be an hour and a half to 2 hours with the board's attorney to discuss the roles and everything concerning being a Board of Education member in the state of Connecticut. So it's been a couple years since we've had that. It's a great time to ask questions, what you can do, what you can't do, shouldn't do, all these things, what your authority is, etc. So we're looking to plan that sometime in late January, I think at the earliest. It all depends on all the other matters that we have to take up. One more item there. There was an email out about a letter from the planning and actually from the town of Lebanon, the Planning and Zoning Commission. They are looking for board members to sit in a meeting in January. Right now, Nicole and Dawn have volunteered for that. I will be there as well. Were you interested in that? No.
I could be.
It's still open. My point is still open. If anyone feels like that, it says it's a 30-minute meeting is what they say in the letter. The dates are January 18th or January 21st, whatever works out better for us. We'll coordinate that. The document that they passed to us from 2010 is fascinating to me for a whole number of reasons beyond education. Talks about things in Lebanon. And gives a lot of background, especially for somebody like me that wasn't really tuned into history of Lebanon before I moved here in 2006. So it gives a lot of perspective. All right. Anybody else wants to join that that meeting? Let me know. That's it from governance. Any questions for governance?
I just have a quick question. It might just be me, and if it is, we can talk about it later. Did you say that in your email you indicated? I'm concerned I might not be getting emails.
Oh yeah. So yeah, thanks for that. I think I have used a email address called Lebanon Board of Education at something something something. It's the wrong email address, so
Okay.
I have to figure out what the right one is. Can
Did
you
we-
help us?
There's a BOE@LebanonCT.org.
Is that the one to use?
No.
That's the one I use for our YouTube production. But you want to use board _ of _ education @LebanonCT.org.
Probably one of those things. Once I do it the first time, it'll remember it. Thanks for bringing that up.
Sure. I think.
Anything else in governance? Okay, policy.
Policy has not met. We don't have anything real pressing. We know we're going to finish the manual, but with everything else going on, we'll meet at the beginning of the year and forge ahead with the next set of policies that we have to address.
Thank you. Oh, safety and security.
Safety and Security did meet on Friday. The minutes will be in next month's packet, as I just submitted them this morning. We discussed, the superintendent reported that there's no updates to round 5 for the security grant. We're still waiting to hear what happens with that. We did get updates on the radio repeater, camera, and the Raptor system. There's going to be a walkthrough. There's a mandatory bid walkthrough scheduled for that. There's an RFP, the request for proposal for the security system upgrade for all 3 schools. And we are waiting for the radio repeater as well as new radios that were ordered to all be programmed by Bob Cady, the radio consultant that we use through the town. School safety policies, we have asked the superintendent to bring that back to Shipman and Goodwin for review, asking me to combine some of those documents. We didn't really feel comfortable going through them, so we wanted to get some advice on those. And then we moved into executive session and discussed other matters that we had to discuss.
Thanks. Any questions about that? Sean?
What is the December 19th walkthrough?
It is the camera upgrade. So there's a mandatory, the request for proposals going out, but anyone who's going to bid has to be at the walkthrough to be able to bid for that upgrade.
And they go to all 3 schools?
I believe so.
Yes, so we put an advertisement in the paper today. We have the RFP on the district website. Part of the process will be for companies who want to bid to attend a mandatory walkthrough of the schools so that they'll have time to meet with a principal, with Kevin, to discuss camera placement, which cameras we think are still in good operating order, and which ones we might need to replace that are pre-existing. Also, we're looking for a system that will be accessible online so that we could be able to use the cameras remotely. Right now we have 3 different systems, and so we're looking to upgrade into one.
Do you know what time the walkthrough is?
That I don't recall. Is Mr. French still here? Do you recall what time the walkthrough is?
10.
Okay. I was just wondering because there's assemblies happening that day too, so making sure that that doesn't become a barrier.
Any other questions for safety?
Just
You
I was
raising
gonna
your hand?
mention, it's also gonna be available on a mobile device.
Thank you. Matt, any news from EastCon?
No, unfortunately, the November meeting that I wanted to attend, I came down with that nasty cold that's been going around, and I was just too sick to attend. I'm attempting to set up a meeting with Gary Malay. I'm not sure. Mala, thank you. Gary Mala, before we go, our next meeting isn't until January. There's none in December.
So Gary's the executive director at EastCon.
Okay. Thank you. Any questions for EastCon? Mark, anything on contracts?
Negotiations? No, we have not met. I understand I'm the chair in that group there. And I think what we'll do is, my understanding is there's nothing pressing at this point. There are some contracts that will be coming up in the future.
This spring.
When do you think you'll be reaching out to him about those?
We usually do the non-certified folks beginning around March. Start them up in March.
Okay. Any questions? All right, John, Superintendent eval?
We did not have a subcommittee meeting this month. However, I wanted to go over a couple things real briefly. Those of you who don't know, last school year, we implemented a new superintendent evaluation, which I have hard copies. If you, anybody else want one? Nicole, you want? Can I pass them down? Anybody else want one? Okay. If you want one online, let Dawn know, because John's pretty inept. So basically, it's based on 9 standards, and this year Bob developed some of his own goals that will be involved. According to the timetable, it's going to be January next month, so we have due a mid-year evaluation of Bob. The way that worked last year is we presented Bob a list of strengths and areas for potential growth. So because we're dealing with the holidays and we'd like to get this done in a timely manner in January, we have a little homework for you all. If you could all find the time to give me a list of strengths and areas of potential growth, say by January 3rd, over the holidays you can do it, and then the subcommittee is hoping to meet maybe that second week of January, so that we will have a mid-year evaluation put together, Dawn and I and Bill. I'll have one put together for the full board meeting in January. So if you could get that to me on the 3rd, and if you don't have anything to offer, if you don't have any specifics, that's fine too, but just reach out.
When do you want it by?
You can do it January 3rd. That's the first Friday, I think, because I think we're going to try to meet the next week.
You want to just email it to you?
Yeah, I can just email.
Okay.
Any other questions, concerns?
I
Yes.
do have one. Do all the board members have the superintendent's goals?
I don't think so.
I don't think we did, you're right.
Following, like tomorrow or the next day, I'll catch up with the 3 of us to just put together a clear 2019-2020 document.
Okay.
And we can email it out to everybody.
Certainly.
That'd be awesome.
Just to get
Thank
the
you.
goals in there. I realized we didn't put those in there.
Is that it, John?
That's it for me.
Okay, thanks. Curriculum and strategic plan.
Yes, so this is the first time the curriculum committee or subcommittee has met as curriculum and strategic plan. So the subcommittees have been sort of just shifted a little bit. Unfortunately, tonight we didn't have time to get into the strategic plan updates for the new subcommittee members, but we will be doing that in January, so stay tuned. January is going to be a big month for us. But before I talk about that, let me just tell you what we did tonight. We talked about the ELA, which is English Language Arts Improvement Plan. So the district has taken a look at some of the needs with the subject area English Language Arts this month. And they have come up with an action plan and some measurable outcomes. So they're going to put that into place and take a look at it again in June, so that we will have another update to see how successful the action plan was. They also gave us a report on math last month, 2 months ago now, I think, 2 months ago. So we will have an update on both ELA and math in June of 2020. We also discussed, which will be coming later as an action item, some new course proposals, which were all in your packet, with the exception of a couple, ST, I want to say, which I'm sure we will have copies of those for the rest of the board members at the action item. In January, so along with the overview for new subcommittee members on the district strategic plan, we will also be receiving an update for each of the school plans. So the schools have been charged with creating their own strategic plan based on the district strategic plan. So we will be seeing those for the first time in January. We'll also be receiving a comprehensive curriculum overview of the district. And we will be talking about some new textbooks for manufacturing. So look for those things in January. It should be at least one pretty long meeting or two shorter meetings. So that's what we're up to.
Thank you. Dawn with another new committee.
So we have enrollment communications and board goals. Subcommittee had a very brief meeting just to kind of get caught up and see what our comments and questions were. And then in January, we'll have a much more in-depth meeting and more to share with you, I think, unless you want to add anything. I think it was very brief, so.
All right, Nicole, I have a deal for you. You can give a little pitch right now, or you can do finance later on. You can lead that off later if you would like to. It's up to
Why
you.
can't I do it now?
You want to?
Well, it's part of the subcommittee.
Go ahead.
I want to feel left out. All right, so our first agenda item was talking about this current budget. The superintendent and Bob talked about how we are going to probably end the year with a deficit. They're not sure. It could probably be around $200,000 or less. One of the reasons is we lost some Title I money, and that affects it. Also special ed costs. So those are the main big ticket items. At the moment, there are no freezes to any accounts, but that may change as we go on. Then we talked about next year's budget, the 2021 budget. We are at the moment going to keep the current health insurance that they have, and they're not going to shop around and look for new insurance if they don't have to. We will have more meetings to discuss this budget, but the plan is that after the February Board of Ed meeting, they are going to put their proposal to the Board of Finance, and we will have more meetings as this subcommittee in January because we really need to nail down what we are going to present. The third item was the maintenance plan, and that still needs to be put together. That would be Kevin's department and Bob's department. And then also the last item was the capital requests for the maintenance for facilities, and that is due by January 9th. And we will be meeting next week as the Finance and Facilities Subcommittee meeting to discuss more of these items.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any questions for finance and facilities?
I have one.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
It's not exactly for finance, though. I'm wondering if I should ask the superintendent if he knows. But the last year we had a bit of an issue with timing as far as the budget, the public input session, and when the board was aware of the budget that was going to be presented to the public. I'm wondering if we have dates for public input sessions before we actually show them what the budget is. So, am I asking this question correctly?
Yeah, we can give the timeline. There's
I'd
still
like-
gonna be
yeah.
a little slight disconnect because, go ahead, the timeline.
So the timeline that we're working on now started our budget development process a little bit earlier, so we could be a little bit ahead of the game than we have been in previous years. The timing for the staff and public input sessions is still the same, mid-January, so we're looking at January 15th for that date. What would be different is that the board tonight is getting a preliminary look at where we are in the budget process where you hadn't received that until next month. So that's a shift in the process. And at the January meeting, which comes prior to the public and staff input sessions, there will have been some modifications to the preliminary budget document that you received today.
Okay, thank you.
And there's two pieces of that as well. There's the capital, our capital request has to be in by January 9th. The scheduled input session, attendance schedule is January 15th, I believe you said.
Yes.
So at that input session, we would be talking a little bit about capital. At that point, we'd already have it turned in. So we can tell folks what's going on with that, why we're doing it. But then the public input session comes before the actual operating budget has to be submitted in February. So it'd be useful to have an input for that.
Absolutely.
And one thing for the board to understand is that while there is a staff input session, there's actually two, because the end times of the school days, we run one for high school, middle school staff, and a second one for the elementary staff. That's not the first time staff have provided input to the budget. The principals and the the central office department leaders have been working with staff already on their requests. And so the staff have been involved from the initiation of the budget cycle. This will be their first time where they could talk, they could see that the budget that we're developing, and that would be their first time where, I'm in the room while they're having those kinds of budget discussions. Because it's been done at the building or central office department level.
Don?
Can you remind me when it gets submitted in February?
So it'll be the Friday after the February board meeting.
Okay, and so just in my head what to expect between now and February. Does that mean following the January 15th input session, the subcommittee will meet, and then during our February, I think it's the 11th, is a Tuesday, meeting, we will finalize things to submit on that Friday?
Yeah.
I think it's fair to say there's gonna be
Multiple
a few
meetings. Okay.
subcommittee meetings between now and then, and
Yeah.
it all depends on, how the work goes, really.
Okay. Thanks.
So, yeah, it's a busy time. Okay, Maureen?
I'd like to back up two committees. I'm taking notes here, and Sarah, you said that they were going to get the update for ELA and math in June. Is it math in July? Isn't that what I heard?
Yes, thank you.
Oh, no, I think
Okay.
it's math in
Math is
June.
first, math
Math
is
is
first.
first.
Math is in
ELA.
June, ELA, okay.
Yes,
Math
thank
is
you.
okay. Thank you. Great.
Anything else, Nicole?
No, I'm all set.
I wasn't sleeping. I wasn't sleeping. I was awake when I was over there. Thank you.
Okay, that's it for the committees. Administrator reports.
So they're in your packet as usual, and this is an opportunity for any administrator who is here that would like to add anything to their reports.
I was gonna take mine.
She reads it much better than I do.
Okay, seeing none, student representative report. The floor is yours.
Yay, Ani, go.
So obviously, being a Lyman student, I'm going to have more information about the high school. And as I try to figure my way through how you guys work, my plan is definitely to add more information from the other schools. I just need to get in touch with the certain people that I need to get in touch with. But I'm going to start with the elementary school first, and for each school, I started with late November. So first of all, November 26th, a musician named Sally Rogers visited the kindergarten. She sings from what I got, she sings folk songs and children's songs, stuff that you would expect from someone visiting our kindergarten class. On December 2nd, the Children's Museum visited our AM pre-K, and kind of pulling ahead a little bit, I have something in between the 2nd and the 9th, December 9th. They also visited our pre-K PM class. And then in between that, December 6th, there was a mindfulness, laughter, and joy PTA assembly, which I was going to ask my sister about until she went and decided to take a nap on me. So I wasn't able to ask her how that went. And then coming up forward, from tomorrow basically on the 11th is the 4th grade concert, which I'm going to be attending, so I'll have information on that for next meeting. On the 13th, our first graders are going to see the Nutcracker. I'm not exactly sure where, but I will find out again for next meeting. And then the last thing I have for the elementary school is that there's going to be a PJ Day for $1 to support the Children's Hospital. And that's all for the elementary school.
This Friday, right? This Friday.
Yes.
And then they raise a lot of money when they do it, every year.
For the middle school, starting with November 7th, or November 27th, they had a PJ Day for $1 to help support our fuel bank in town. December 3rd, they had boys and girls basketball tryouts, and they have that all figured out now, and I think they're starting to practice and everything. December 4th and December 5th, drama auditions took place for the Beauty and the Beast production. I'll have more information on when that is, when the time comes. On December 12th, they have their winter concert where the band and chorus will be singing. Should be nice. And again, on December 13th, they also have the same PJ Day for the Children's Hospital. And on the 17th, they have their honor roll movie trip for people who made, obviously, the honor roll. And now, on to the high school. So I started with November 21st for this. So we had an open house. I think it was more ag focused than overall school focused, because I know there was a lot of ag students that were there to help participate in that. And then on the 26th, right before we went into Thanksgiving break, we had our NHS induction ceremony, which included our students Grace Gardella, Margaret King, Anna Mathewson, Dylan Wentworth, Antonio Ponte, Paige Webb, Eliza Olson, Clayton Goodrich, Owen Curtis, Kyle Miller, Abby Green, Catherine Anderson, Kayla Boutin, and I. And then on the 27th, we had a pep rally to recognize our Lyman volleyball students for making states, or for winning states, I should say. But we also gave recognition to people who took place in the Charter Oak Festival, which is basically something that our chorus students do every single year. And we also gave recognition to the people in the plays, like Brian's Mirror. And again, the NHS inductees were also recognized then. On the 5th, I actually was able to attend this because I was doing some volunteer work that day. We had our band and chorus winter concert, and when I watched it, one of my favorite pieces from that time was the first piece that happened in the whole entire concert, and it was played by our jazz band, which it was a song from Charlie Brown, like the classic When You Think of Charlie Brown, like that song, you know what I'm talking about? I thought it was really nice, and that was my favorite part. And then, so the jazz band did two pieces, and then it was the chorus and the band's turn to play, and the first piece that they did together, and it was really nice. And it was nice to hear both of our music departments come together for that piece, because you don't really hear them together a lot. And December 6th to 7th, which was last weekend, our Model UN members had their field trip to the Hartford to talk about their convention. Well, it was the convention, and they, I'm pretty sure it's the one where they all met up with everyone and actually like debated and stuff. I wasn't able to get any personal information on how it went, but I intended to, for the record. And the most recent thing that I have is from the 9th, when our PSAT scores came out, and you know, I thought that was pretty important. And yeah, that's all I have, and thank you for having me tonight.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us. Were you playing a fall sport? Is that why you haven't been?
Yeah.
And how'd you guys do?
We did really good.
Oh. Great.
It was exciting. I felt really bad for missing, but it was like the most important like days of our season were on those days, and I was like, wow.
Well, we missed you. We talked about you every time.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. Really
Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Okay, report of superintendent.
Okay, so first part of the superintendent's report is the monthly enrollment report. You'll see that the enrollment overall stayed flat at 995 students. We do have an increase of 1 student at the elementary school, 1 student at the middle school, but we had a reduction at the high school by 2 students, so it stayed flat. And the magnet school enrollment stayed at 30 as it was last month. Also included in the packet, which was not in the packet last month, is the schools that those students are attending. So we have 15 students at Charles Barrow STEM Academy, 7 at the ACT School. So that is the Performing Arts Magnet School in Wyndham that's run by EastCon. We have at the Glastonbury East Hartford Magnet School 1 student. That's a school that's run by CREC. CREC also runs the Hartford Academy of the Arts. We have 1 student there. We have 1 student at the Marine Science Magnet School that's run by Learn. 3 Rivers Middle College, also run by Learn. We have 3 students there, and 2 students at the Riverside Magnet School. At Goodwin College, another magnet school run by Learn. So 30 students. All right, next on the list is specifically a report on the 6th grade climate and culture, but I will add some things in just generally about climate and culture and initiatives that we have underway within the district. But as the board knows, there is a concern this year at 6th grade, and the concern has been raised vocally within the community. There was a parent that came to the board last month and addressed the board during public comment specific to this issue. It's not an issue that the school or the district has been ignoring, but it has been an issue that has posed challenges in terms of creating quick changes in student behavior. As you know, there have been some parents that have voiced concern that there are members of this class that have been behavioral concerns since early on. Last year as 5th graders, they had a great year, actually. And so when behaviors occurred at the 6th grade level, it was a little bit of a surprise that some of the behaviors that had been seen at the elementary school that we did not see as 5th graders reappeared as sixth graders. As the board knows, we held a meeting with parents of sixth graders at the middle school, where we had members of the sixth grade team present, the principal, myself, Cheryl Beaker, who is our Director of Pupil Services, also attended that meeting. We provided information to the parents on state statute around disciplinaries in schools. We provided copies of board policy, and then we explained to the parents various strategies that we are employing, not only specifically with the sixth grade, but we do these things with all of our students. And so the approach has been to mix traditional disciplinary actions such as detentions, in-school suspension, out-of-school suspension, those kinds of traditional approaches with approaches that are considered restorative practices. And so restorative practices are implemented in a way to get students to more fully understand the impact of their behavior on the people around them, but also the impact of their behavior on themselves. And so what the parents heard that night, and then what was provided again in a follow-up letter from the principal, Mr. Laskrzewski, is that the restorative practices are, one way that we implement them is through restorative circles, where either students or a staff member can raise an issue of concern for the students in the class, and then each of the students gets to speak about that issue and the impact that it is having on them. And so they talk about student behaviors in that way, how aggressive or antagonistic or just negative between student behaviors makes them feel, and the impact that it has on them. And then when appropriate, individual students are also brought in for counseling. We have at the middle school a school psychologist. We have one school school counselor, and then we have the social worker that is shared amongst the three schools. Each of those individuals provides group counseling, and they also provide one-to-one intervention with students. And so the counseling can take the form of empowerment, where you have students that have been victimized, or they're experiencing negative incidences in their life, either in school or out of school, and provides those students with mechanisms that they can cope with those issues, but also take control of the aspects of those issues that they would have control over. And so that's occurring with the students in sixth grade, but also occurs with students in all the grades at all the schools. The principal, in his letter that was dated November 22nd, provided some data regarding the number of students that qualified for a monthly reward program that was implemented at the middle school. 51 out of 62 students, so a vast majority of the students have qualified for that reward for the month of November. He reported that office referrals, September to October, we're seeing a declining incidence being reported to the office through November. And so those efforts are still underway. I do know that the sixth grade team recently had a meeting where they are reviewing the data to see if there are ways that they can have a greater impact on the student. So those are things specific to the sixth grade. But then more globally, those counseling sessions provided by the school psychologists at each of the schools, the school counselors here at the middle school and at the high school, and the social worker that's shared amongst all three buildings. We're providing sessions for kids either in group or individual as needed at each of our schools. I believe we heard from our student rep to the board today about a mindfulness program that was held at the elementary school. That's just one example of programs that are occurring at the elementary level to get students to understand how they have control over how they interact with their peers. And they brought in a mime that showed them how they can control their body and how they could control their emotions through positive facial expressions. For the staff of the district, we've been providing ongoing since last year, continuing professional development in restorative practices. We had Joanne Freiberg from the state of Connecticut come in and do training for the high school and the middle school staff. Joanne is no longer at the state, but we have her returning to continue with that work with the elementary school, and at the same time, we're bringing in professional development providers from EastCon, been working with the professional learning communities at the high school on restorative practices. And so it's an ongoing issue for any school system to address student behaviors and help students behave appropriately and setting appropriate versus one type of behavior that they think might be appropriate for any setting that they find themselves in. Part of this is teaching students discretionary behavior, that some behavior might be appropriate in a very informal setting amongst their peers, but not so appropriate in a classroom or in a public movie theater or a place of worship.
I have two things to say about that. First of all, I applaud the efforts that you're making to correct the situation in sixth grade. I think it's great that you're taking steps towards it. I honestly feel it's not enough. So I was thinking about the problem, and of course you all know that I'm a teacher as well, and I teach sixth grade. So one of the things that I was thinking about, and I was actually talking to a couple of teachers at the middle school, is in our district, we implemented a recess every day, and we found that that has huge impact because it gets the kids outside or, in the gym, moving around, and it's also a carrot that you can hold over their heads, like you earn this time. And so if they don't earn the time, then they spend the time either making up assignments or thinking about their behavior, but it's something on a daily basis that they can use. And it gets the kids moving around. So I was wondering, and probably not for this year, but next year, is there a way to put in the schedule a recess? Because I know the teachers at the middle school would probably appreciate that, all the grade levels.
So that
That's
is
a question.
definitely something,
Yeah, I'm
right.
throwing it
I
out
know
there.
that you don't expect the answer
No,
right now.
right, I'm
but
throwing it out
It's
there
a suggestion
as
that
a-
we'll take a look at.
Right, because I think it's huge. And then the second thing is, whenever people use referrals as the mark on whether or not the behavior problems are decreasing, I always look at that because either it's going to be factual information that yes, your referrals are going down, or it's an indication that your administration is not correcting the problem, and so the teachers refuse to write referrals and they just take care of everything in-house. So when you say the referrals are going down, I'm wondering, is it because there are less behavior problems, or is it because the teachers have kind of washed their hands of this? So I'm also throwing that out as food for thought. I don't expect an answer tonight, but I'm very concerned about that sixth grade class, only because I do talk to some parents that have sixth grade students, and no one that I've talked to lately has said, yep, it's getting better there. So I'm just letting you know.
I just want to back up her statement about recess. When my children went through the school, I had two children. One went through the multi-age and had the recess even through the 7th grade and 8th grade, up to whenever the multi-age ended, I don't remember exactly. But that, to him, was a huge, huge carrot. And I'm saying him because boys love recess.
Exactly.
And I'm not saying girls don't too, but,
I think a lot of kids like recess.
but I'm just saying that, and my other son didn't have that opportunity. And that was a little bone of contention between the two of them.
Okay.
Any other questions on that? Okay.
Right. Where am I? Oh, traffic at each school. So for each school, the board had asked, is it possible that we can, reevaluate traffic flow at each of the schools? And so I had said that we would need, a professional to come in to do that, and that I would reach out to the engineering company that we generally use to see if they do that kind of work. So I had some correspondence with Kevin Grindle at Anchor Engineering. He said that is work that his company normally does. So he was going to get back to me with what he thought a study like that would cost. And so I don't have that information yet, but it's in the works. Right? He already has copies of, which includes a layout of the parking lots, and if the original architectural drawings included directional arrows and lane markings, etc., because of other work that he's done in the district, so he has that already, and so maybe that facilitates some of this work that he's going to do. So when I have more information about the costs and whether or not that's where that fits into the purchasing policy, I'll bring that to you. Specifically to the high school issue, so we were thinking. So one of the things that we had recognized was that the signpost that directs parents not to enter into the bus loop at certain times of the day, etc., is misplaced if we want parents to actually turn into the parking lot area, right? And so we had talked about relocating that signpost and then improving the signage. The recommendation now is that we'll probably leave that signpost as a second visual for parents, but put an additional signpost closer to the intersection. Kathleen actually told me about a sign that she sees at her child's school, which is a layout of the parking lot. So it's a bigger sign with like directional arrows that go through that sign and direct parents to where they're supposed to go for the drop-off. So Kathleen is going to get me a picture of that. Kevin is going to be contacting the facilities director at that school system to get some information about that kind of sign, to see if it's going to be something that would work for us. And that would be an interim piece because, as you know, we don't have a designated parent drop-off loop. The only school that has that is the elementary school, and it used to be the old bus loop. And then with the renovation, the elementary school got a separate bus loop. Neither one of the other schools has a designated parent loop. And so that would be part of the study that eventually whoever gets a contract to do the work would tell us what it would take to make that happen and what it would cost to make that happen. A renovation of the parking lots, that could be a costly project, and so, but it could also become a school building project that could be supported through grants, and so we'd have to really see where that goes.
You don't think you have the talent in-house to observe, monitor, and initiate these changes without going out to engineering?
So we've already had the resident trooper observe over the past. This has been a long-standing issue. So it was one of the things that was first brought to me, the flashing lights that we finally got on Route 207, but also concerns about bus parking on school grounds and traffic flow at each of the schools. It has been an issue that it's long-standing. And so over the course of the years, we've had either the resident trooper or a town constable or the SRO who have some professional expertise in this area provide feedback. And we've acted on the feedback in terms of making some signage changes. The middle school really did a nice job in recruiting a cadre of teachers that volunteered to do traffic duty every day after school. We got them reflective clothing to wear. We bought them new signs. And so part of that came out of the recommendations that came from Trooper Kono, I believe. So we've been using the expertise that has been readily available, but to talk about adding in designated parent drop-off points or restructuring the parking lots, that really requires an engineer stamp on it to show that the changes that are being proposed will be safe. Similar to how a few years ago we made some modifications to the traffic islands at the elementary school to allow the buses to be able to turn on school grounds instead of going off the school property and back onto the school property so that they could park. We ended up, the recommendation from the town planner was the original plans have an engineer stamp on them. So if you're going to make any changes, get an engineer stamp. And that's what we did, just to change the shape and size of the traffic islands. So this would be a bigger project than that.
Any questions?
Yes.
Go ahead.
I wonder if we're making this too big, only because I know we had talked about asking the experts for their, maybe it was even me that said, can we ask the experts how to make our entrance or our driveways more safe? But I wonder if it's becoming more of something than we originally intended. But I didn't think the original intention was to engineer an entire new, entryway. What I thought was going to happen is that the police officers or whomever else was there could give us suggestions, similar probably to what you were just implying. But it's interesting that the middle school teachers are taking that on or volunteering to do that after school, when we were told not that long ago that the high school teachers could not do drop-off duty. And I think that would solve a lot of problems. I'm not saying that's what needs to happen, but it might be a solution to have more bodies monitoring when students are driving in or when students are getting out of their cars and walking, and to give a gentle reminder to parents maybe who are going the wrong direction or dropping off. I wonder if that could be a solution, and how we could maybe think out of the box a little bit and using what we have. I know signage definitely needs to be investigated, but I'm not sure that needs to be an engineering project. And I have one other comment about that. Last month, I'm wondering if this is just on hold because we're not sure which direction we're going in, but I think you had said Jay would send a communication to the high school parents about the traffic pattern and the traffic flow, and I'm wondering if we're just holding off on that until we have, a permanent solution, or should we, in the interim, send out, this is what, you should be doing when you drop off, please, please remember to go in this direction, because I know that was reported last month. I just wanted to bring that back to the forefront.
I put in for an IT request to get a drone shot of our parking lot so that we could, use like a Photoshop kind of thing to show like a traffic pattern so people could actually see that. I'm just waiting on the picture. We haven't had a lot of good weather lately to get a drone up and.
Good.
That's it for me.
Anything else? Okay.
One,
Matt?
do we have any of the pictures that they took when they were gonna do the solar panels that don't have pictures of the solar panels that they could use? It might be quicker.
I don't know if those would,
Would work.
I have a copy, but I was hoping to use like one of our photo editor, software packages to do that. So take the actual photograph. I guess.
I was just trying to come up with a quicker solution.
thank you. We'll look into that if it's gonna take too long to get the drone shot. Item number 4, exit interviews. So this is something that we've been interested in doing for a little while now. I had solicited from the URSA and NASA superintendent group to see if any of the districts are using some kind of an exit interview or an exit survey for when staff leave the district. So again, very few of them shared anything with me, so I don't know if that means that they don't have them, just like we don't have it right now. But we do have 2 samples. One was from Griswold, one's from Putnam. They're very similar, not quite the same, but very similar. That's a template there that I think between those 2 and some things that we were able to find online, we could quickly develop something that would be anywhere from 8 to 15 questions that we could use to solicit information as staff members exit the district. There had also been some little bit of discussion about gathering information from students as they exit the district. And so the information that I could find there is primarily for seniors who are graduating from school systems to get some information on that. The high school already does some of this work. The ag department, the ASTE department does some of this already. And so we would just take another look at that to see if we're asking the right questions when we do ask our graduating seniors. When kids leave in other grades, I haven't been able to find good survey. It's not like the family moved out of town, so they're opting to go to a magnet school or something. And so what is behind those decisions? So I haven't been able to locate any survey that anybody else is using right now. One hasn't been shared with me, and I've asked. But I also haven't seen samples of that online. The Superintendent Association group, the AASA, has a decent one for graduating students. But I haven't located one that's used for kids that are opting out for other choices.
Would you find any benefit to receiving exit interview strategies or paperwork from other than school businesses?
So I myself have looked at some examples.
I mean, I'm
from,
offering
from
businesses
like
that I
if your
work at.
hospital
Yeah,
uses one.
right.
I'm sure I'd be happy to take a look at it.
I mean, I don't know if it'll
Right.
shed any light on the subject, but if you want, I can probably get that for you.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, that'd be fine.
I could probably get you one consulting firm as well.
2 things. One is there, I like the idea of, can we create our own survey for the exiting students? Why can't we just come up with our own?
So we could, but it's always good if there's work that's pre-existing to
Right.
use that to
Yeah.
guide what you do.
I'm only saying that because I think we have a different kind of an issue than maybe other towns with our enrollment being so low, so we can tailor it to that specific issue. And also, is there a way to maybe interview the students that are going to those other schools, like the magnet and the STEM school, is there a way to interview those parents to see like why they chose those schools over ours, to give us more information on how to improve?
So some of that conversation does occur with the school counselors, either with the students and or with parents when they're doing that. But I don't know that, the issue is I don't know that we're keeping track of the data that they're discussing, and so you really need a tool for that.
So if we came up with a tool,
Yeah.
could we potentially give it to those families that are sending their kids out elsewhere?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any other questions on that? Alexis?
I have one more. The exit interview for the staff members, what is the purpose of that? Why did you come up with that?
So the concern there was just to find out why staff are leaving, not necessarily those that are retiring, because
Right.
we kind of know why they're leaving.
Yeah.
But for instance, like the resignation letter we had today, what's the reason that becoming a school counselor at a state tech school was going to be a better option for that counselor?
Okay.
To answer your question, initially, the exit interview, in my experience in my business, you gain valuable information when people are leaving. It's constructive criticism, it's things that you wouldn't maybe speak when you're freely employed by a certain place. I know that a lot of colleges will not give grades until you complete your evaluation of your professors. So there's definitely ways, and there's a lot of information that we are not gathering, is walking out this door out of all three of our schools that we really need. There's a ton of information online everywhere where I think we just need to come up as a group and say, okay, this is what we want to do, and I think we should just hopefully do it quickly so we don't lose another year where students are leaving, staff is leaving, or, you know, 8th graders are already thinking about where they want to go to high school.
Yeah.
So if we lose another year, it's going to be a shame. We've been talking about it for another year, and then it's gone again.
Yeah.
So that's my 2 cents.
And it does make sense if there's issues that we could correct them if we got the information.
That would be the point, yeah.
Helps in evaluations too.
Okay, moving on, composting cafeteria food waste.
Yeah, so this question came out of the presentation that we had from Chartwell's at the last meeting. Carlos had mentioned that organic waste right now primarily at the high school is being picked up by somebody who has livestock at the property. It happens to be one of our district employees who's feeding the waste from the high school cafeteria to his animals. So we don't right now have a composting program at any of our schools. Chartwell's does do composting in other districts that have the interest in doing that. And so Carlos, now that he knows that we're interested and perhaps starting a composting program, is gathering information. He sent me pictures of a composting system that's being used in the Wilton Public Schools, I believe it was. And so he's going to gather more information, and we can figure out if it's going to be something that's feasible for us. I do know that with the new greenhouse here at the middle school, we're doing composting on our own of the plant materials at the greenhouse.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome.
Anything else on that? Engineering study of school entrances update.
All right, so as you know, we commissioned a preliminary study of the school entrances to see if there are ways that they can be made more secure. That is something that is still in the works. The details of that was discussed in executive session, so due to safety reasons, we can't speak about it openly in public, but that study is underway. We have for the engineer. The engineer is meeting with an architect this week or next week regarding some questions that I had already had about the work, but the Safety and Security Committee came up with some additional things that I will share. So that's underway.
Any questions on that?
I don't have a question on that. Question, something that's not on this, though. Last month, we tabled, talked about the calendar. We were supposed to act on a calendar, and it was around the teacher conferences, and I'm just kind of curious where that...
So I had said that if we had something ready for this meeting, I would bring it forward. Otherwise, it would be likely a January item.
Okay.
So there's nothing tonight. Fixing the conferences is something that everybody wants to do, and then when we sit down and look at the calendar, the details become a little problematic about scheduling so that parents who have children in more than one school are going to be able to access the conference time, et cetera. So there are some issues that we're still working on.
Okay. We're ready for the finance report.
All right, I just gave it. You want me to give it again?
Um,
His report.
We're gonna, we'll take it.
I'll go plug this in.
They should walk on each other as much as we can avoid it.
So, right, so Nicole did a nice job recapping the subcommittee meeting. And so Bill is correct, we don't need to rehash that entire meeting, but there are some things regarding the current budget that you should know about. And so there is still a likelihood that we're running a deficit. We don't think it'll be as high as originally projected at $200,000, but some items that occurred, some issues that occurred because of changing special ed enrollment that occurred late last year was not budgeted for last year because there were unanticipated changes. And then we're not budgeted for this current year because they happened too late in the budget process. This is something that both the Board of Ed and the Board of Finance were apprised of in the spring. So the Board of Finance already knows that we could be running in the red again this year, although we're going to do whatever we can without negatively impacting programming for kids to close the budget deficit as close to zero as possible. Bob, is there anything else you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, I would just say we're at the point in the year now that we have an initial understanding of the 2021 budget where we have 5 months of actual data in, and some of the variable large cost items are now becoming known. And as you know, special ed is one of the major expense items, and it's one of the major items that we don't really know much about in terms of finite numbers until the kids are placed and the programs are in place and we're into October, November. So I've started the process working very closely with our special ed department, and this past week they submitted the data submission that drives the excess cost calculation for our reimbursement. So we'll be reviewing that with them this week, and in detail we will collectively review all of our purchase orders and invoices to make sure we've encumbered and accounted for all the special ed expenses appropriately. So that'll have a major impact on our what our year-end forecast will be. So prior to the next board meeting, I'll have a detailed line item by line item forecast for the year. And I'll just point out that we probably have 550 to 600 line items. You know, I don't look at every single one in detail, but all the big things will be, especially salaries as well. And on the magna school tuitions, we will be, barring any changes in enrollment, about $45,000 to the good on that. So those monies obviously will be used to offset any other accounts that will be in deficit.
Any questions on current year budget? All right, so for 2021, what you have in your packet is a document that's identified as the 2020-2021 initial budget summary. It tells you where we are right now in the budget development, which is a 6.12% increase. And I know that there might be some disappointment on the part of some of the board members, because I told you that my plan was to bring a budget more in the 3 to 4% range, and that some of the hard cutting would have already been done by this point. And the reason I am bringing you this is because I need you to know what we're trying to do in terms of new initiatives to support strategic plan, particularly in the areas of academics and climate and culture. And so that's the first part of the budget driver explanation here on this document. We're trying to recapture the math tutor that we lost due to a cut in Title I funding. We're trying to add some curriculum writing monies so that we can accelerate some of the curriculum revisions that we have ongoing in the district. We would like to add a full-time social worker because we find that the current staffing of one social worker spread amongst 3 schools is proving to be inadequate to meet the needs of the students and families in the district. There is a request to increase 1 part-time secretary to full-time for the school year only. And that's primarily due to just the traffic flowing in and out of the school in terms of visitors, et cetera, that come to the elementary school, and an increase of the assistant principal position back to full-time. So we've heard from the principal as well as staff members who feel that the high school needs a full-time AP as opposed to part-time. What you don't see in here, so some cutting has already been done, right? Even though we're at a high percentage number. You don't see full-time secretaries at all 3 schools. You don't see an assistant principal request for here at the middle school, something that the principal has asked me for every single year, something that the parents at the 6th grade parent meeting had suggested that we do, add another administrator here at the middle school. You don't see that here. And so some cutting has already been done, and that's just some examples of it. In all, the priorities, the budget priorities that are listed there is a modest 1.05% increase to the overall budget. The problem is it's not the only increase, right? We're catching up a little bit on sped tuitions that weren't budgeted for back in April of last school year. But in addition to those, there are always changes in special education enrollment and programming that students need. And so there are other impacts there. So there's an increase in sped tuitions, there's an increase in special services for special education students. And as Bob explained at the subcommittee meeting, due to the structure of how we're providing students supports and the change in enrollment that we've had in the special education student body, we actually have more of a cost next year than we do this year, but we're going to get less reimbursement and excess costs from the state based upon what it's going to cost us to educate individual students. So the ECS formula is not based on your total of expenses for your outplaced kids. It's based on how much does it cost you to educate this child. And so we've had some decreases in what it costs to educate individual children, but we've had increases in the programs that kids need. And so the cost went up and the reimbursement went down. And so that impacts the budget. Overall sped is 1.79% increase to the budget. Salaries, the board just negotiated 2 contracts, teacher and admin. We'll have 2 more contracts this spring, so there are estimated values associated with those staff members. But salary increases and hourly rate increases alone are 2%. Right? And you know that we've been receiving 2% or less basically over the last several years. 1 year was 0 and 1 year was 0.66. So salaries alone is a 2. Add in health, anticipated health insurance increases, that's another 0.8. So between that and the salaries, we're at 277. Just for those, which is more money than we've received in the past several years. And then all other expenses, just $99,000. That includes increases in transportation, et cetera. Earlier in the meeting during public comment, our middle school principal voiced his concern over cutting, and he's hoping to get support from the board in a request to the town for a larger allotment of money for education than we've received previously. But at the same time, we are still at the drawing board in terms of finding ways to bring this request down. But I thought that you needed to know where the money is right now.
Bob? I don't have a lot to add to the superintendent's comments, but I just want to talk about a couple things. Barring any action by the superintendent or the board or anyone, the 6.12 number will change because I have some items in there as placeholders that are flat. And some are going to go up and some are going to go down, and will they balance out? Like, for instance, oil and diesel fuel are budgeted at flat. That's a joint effort between the town and the Board of Ed. This time of the year, we start to talk to the broker, look at usage, market price, and so on and so forth. So there's going to be some ups and downs to that number without any action taken by anyone else. The health insurance number, I'm using a 5% increase number. That's based on where our number was in relation to the partnership premium rates, and those rates change every quarter. They've been going up quarter to quarter to quarter, and they have them published through June 30th, 2020 of 0.7%. So will the 5% be real? It could be 6 or 7, it could be 4, I don't know. So that number I know is going to change. And I just want to touch back on the excess cost. In simple terms, we get reimbursed through that formula for students whose programs cost roughly more than $90,000. The mix is such this year that we have more students at $90,000 and under, whereas in previous years we had higher cost individual students. So even though our costs are equal or greater, we're getting about $147,000 less based on the budget right now, because the students cost less individually, but collectively they cost more. It's an unfair formula, but it's the way it works.
And also the state cut.
That's not a state cut,
That state cut the percentage too,
no,
correct?
well, the percentage, the pot of money is the same this year as it was last year, and we usually get about 75% because each district's proportion ends up being roughly the same. But the state is supposed to reimburse dollar for dollar, but they never have because they don't have enough money.
Any other questions on that? just to sum that up, if you look at the bottom line, it's a $1.2 million increase in this initial cut here. In a 2% year, which is more that we've been used to getting over time, is like, you know, 400,000. It's a lot of money here, and you know, in my view, everything is on the table that doesn't have to do with, you know, teaching and learning. So all the support things, if you're serious about this, we got to get serious about finding savings. That's the only way it's going to work, or have a chance. Any questions on the budget? What do you need from us in the near term on this?
So what I'm going to need, which has already been committed, is more time with the board's, it's finance and facilities now, right? The new committee, as I work with my admin team, and they work with their staff back in their buildings and departments on making some difficult decisions about where the priorities are now, and what it means for how we are going to move forward in the district with bringing this back to a more manageable number.
This is a good briefing sheet here. I mean, I like it a lot. So if the board members have questions, you know, after we leave the meeting here, feel free to reach out to you.
Absolutely. Yep.
Any of those things. I know you're busy this time of year, but that's what we're doing. All right, anything else on this? Thanks, Bob. Okay, we're in action items. We have an action on a letter of resignation. Have a motion to that?
Move to accept Laura Gerber's resignation with regret.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing no discussion, all those in favor of the approving the letter of resignation or accepting it? Thank you, that's unanimous. The next action item is new courses at Lyman Memorial.
Motion to accept all the new courses at Lyman Memorial.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second on adding the new courses at Lyman Memorial. Is there any discussion on the courses?
Yes. There will be some discussion because there are some courses that are not in your packet that you need information on before you vote on them. And I just want to say that I apologize that you didn't have all of the courses in the packet. I didn't understand that we were going to be voting on more, but I do, during our curriculum meeting, I do feel comfortable with the recommendation, with all the information that was given in the subcommittee.
So these, I want to just make sure I understand, these courses that we're talking about are for the following year, so that would be in a different budget year, correct? Than the one we're in?
2021.
Thank you.
And there are no additional cost, because they're just not.
Well,
So there
Using
are
staff
some
members.
costs associated with some of these
Just
classes,
textbooks.
but minimal.
Not staffing.
Few $100s, no new staff. The courses, if you approve them tonight, will be incorporated into the high school program studies. Students will be made aware that there are new opportunities for them. And then we run courses if the students actually enroll them.
In terms of the cost, assuming all 4 of the English courses ran, it would be an increased cost of a little under $1,500. And if the food science class ran, it would be an increased cost of $1,600.
So this new one that you passed out just now?
That one
This is
has-
the added ones?
There's 3 ASCII courses in there that, when they were originally brought forward, it was not clear that they were replacing existing courses. So we had them go back and rewrite them so that it was a little bit clearer that they're replacing courses that already exist. We're not really adding, we're reshuffling what we already have into different categories.
So then, there's no associated cost at all with these classes?
No, those are all zero if you look at the cost for them.
Okay,
The
that's
only
like-
one that has an additional cost is the one food lab that we built over the summer. So we used our ASTI funds to build a new food lab, and so the course to go with that food lab has the $1,600 cost. Although, if it were to run, there's also the possibility that we could use Perkins funding next year to cover some of the money in the $1,600.
And if not all, if not the 20 to 25 children that were estimated take it, then the cost would be less because we would need less textbooks,
Yeah.
et cetera.
Yeah. So it would be we'd purchase the materials based on the enrollment.
So, I'm just gonna take one as an example.
Okay.
Okay, and it's not to pick on this particular class, it's only the science fiction fantasy literature class?
Yes.
So, this class, it talks about textbooks of $425.
Mhm.
Okay, are these physical books or are these electric books?
They're
Electronics?
probably physical books, and they're not textbooks, they're novels. So they're
Right.
going to be learning about science fiction and fantasy, so they'll purchase
Right.
some novels for that.
So has anyone looked into the possibility of using electronic media that might be less expensive?
We could try it, although it's harder with novels because of the fact that we're not purchasing.
Well, again, I'm using that as an
Yeah,
example.
for one kid to use one time, they have to be re-signed out to another kid the next year, and the year after that, and the year after that, and the year after that. So we would have to look into what kind of platforms are available to do that kind of a sign out if we were to move them over to the e-books.
Especially where you may have varying number of
Yeah.
people in
Like
classes
the
from year
textbook
to year.
companies have designed it so that the textbooks can be electronically signed out to people because it's going to be novels that are going to be science fiction novels. We would have to see if there's a company that provides a similar kind of service.
But when we do buy a traditional textbook for a course, we are looking at the online presence of those textbooks.
In addition to purchasing it, is what you're saying.
Actually, the last 2 books we've purchased for a whole grade level, we haven't purchased the actual physical copies. We've
physical,
only purchased the online copies.
Okay, I was just asking.
Yeah.
Any other questions on the courses?
What's the minimum class size when you would run the class? Or
So, most of the English classes are running at class sizes of around 15 to 20, although there are a couple smaller ones, like the AP classes tend to run a little bit smaller because if we're going to run them at all, we just don't have like 20 kids in some cases that want to take an AP course. They still kind of hover in the 8 to 10 range usually. For the ASTI courses, the cap on the ASTI courses because of lab space is, I think, what, 15, Jen? Yeah, it's 15 kids, so the maximum enrollment in those classes is 15 because of the lab space. Minimum enrollments usually, they range usually 8 to 15 depending on the class. Although, again, with some of the higher level advanced courses, they're a little bit smaller because we only have 80 kids in the ASTI program and only so many of them get to the point where they can take those upper level classes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Got another question for you. I'm just curious, under the Introduction to Food Science.
Yes.
What is supplemental materials? What would be give me an example of what that might be?
For that class, supplemental materials might be, because they're learning about like the science of food, so like how does aroma affect taste and that sort of stuff. It might be supply related things that will allow
Okay,
them
I
to do
just was-
labs
yeah, I
that
was just
they
curious.
don't have right now.
They will be including aroma.
Yeah.
Because when I met with Ms. Grogan about these courses, she said that that's a big part of food science.
No, I just wanted to
Yeah,
understand.
it's supplies to run labs that they don't already have as a result of the other programs that they run.
Okay.
Any other questions, comments? A motion on the table to accept the new courses at Lyman, and it's been seconded. All those in favor, raise your hand. All right, that's Mark, John, Alexis, Sarah, Maureen, Dawn, and Nicole. All those opposed? Abstentions? Matt abstains. Thank you. Motion passes. The next action item is an action on capital request. I think that we will take no action on that because the subcommittee needs to do a lot of work on that.
Yep.
So that's
Yep.
a scratch
Okay.
for tonight. Next on the list, items for next agenda. Anybody have anything?
Calendar?
Calendar?
I'd like to continue the efforts on the exit interviews and hopefully move forward with something. I did have one extra thought while we were talking about exit interviews, is our fourth graders moving up, when they go to their moving up ceremony, something simple of 3 questions for those children moving up to the middle school. What was your favorite thing about, we could ask very simple questions to that group of children. Same of the 8th graders moving up. What was your best thing about your memory of middle school? What did you like best? What would you do better? It's simple questions like that you're gonna be surprised of what they get. And I would include parents in those conversations because we're gonna get a lot of feedback from parents as well. So it doesn't always have to be exit interviews. People are going for a bad reason. It could just be, what did you like? What did you not like? Or what would you do better in your experience in the last 4 years in that school? So I really want to move forward with that. I think we're missing a lot of data.
I like that.
Anything else for the agenda?
So you said that.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, no, go ahead. I'm sorry.
We'll have to meet to go over the major evaluation.
Yes, so we'll need to have a special meeting.
Yeah, before.
We're looking at the week before the scheduled board meeting.
Correct.
So if I'm doing the calendar correct in my head, that's Monday, January 6th, that week.
For the
So-
3 of us, do you mean? Or the whole board that week? I
Well,
forget.
I was thinking the 3
3
of us.
yeah.
Okay, so subcommittee meeting.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then we go into executive session if we come up with something at the full board meeting.
Right. Good, I agree.
Yep.
And then the other issue, though, is we will most likely have to have a special board meeting to meet our gate for the capital submittal, unless we get a waiver to line up with the calendar. Maybe we'll explore that.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else tonight? Seeing no other business, we are adjourned.
You called it. You called it.